when I ask parents what they are willing to do so that their children stay happy and healthy, they usually say everything. And the same was true for me when my son wasn't doing well for over a year. But on the day where I realized that he was giving me very important life lessons simply by being ill and not happy, on that day I was 34 years old, 2 months and 6 days, and my life began. My son was better within a week, and it was the start of a method called PresentChild. Over 30 years old now. So I take you back to that day, that particular day. I was a young woman and I didn't want to have any children. There was overpopulation and pollution. The environment wasn't doing well. So what was the use of putting another child into this world? But nevertheless, I got 2 children. And I remember the day when I had my firstborn in my arms, this little bundle of child. And it was a sheer purity, love, and light. It appealed to me that was looking at me. And whoa, I kept looking at him. It was a son. I kept looking at him. And he was looking back, but not only looking at the surface, but it looked as if he was looking right through me. And it was a very special experience, I can tell you. But, whoa, I wasn't much of a mom. You know, I had to learn to become a mom. I even had to learn to become myself. I felt I wasn't worth, I was worth nothing as a mom. I was worth nothing as a human being. And I had I had a postnatal depression after his birth. So 3 years later, not much of his light and love was, well, love, I guess, yes, but not much of his light was left. His eyes grew pale. Actually, he was very serious and oldish and wrinkles in his forehead and thinking a lot and asking a lot, but not in a healthy way. What else was there? He couldn't play really well for himself, you know, with his toys, but also not with other kids. And the other thing was that he had a head and throat, you know, this whole part was full of mucus. So he had a chronic cold for a year, and all this green snot was coming out everywhere, ears and nose and throat. And whatever we did, nothing helped. And my conclusion as a mom, because it was heartbreaking for me to see, I wanted to help him, but it didn't work out. And yes, I felt he was unhappy, really, truly unhappy. And that was even more heartbreaking for me. So we asked for several kinds of help and nothing helped, actually, or only for a short period, and then there was a setback again. So 1 year later, there wasn't much progress, and on an evening, I realized, well, I could just write down his story, his whole life story, beginning at pregnancy, his birth, and everything after that. So that's what I did. I thought maybe, you know, we come across another healthcare professional, and then the story is nicely on paper. So that's what I did. I wrote down his whole life story. And when I read it back, it was in my face. It was as if my son was speaking to me with loving wisdom. And he said, "Mom, isn't it so that you are very serious and oldish, and you have wrinkles in your forehead, and you have become a thinking person, not a spontaneous living person anymore, but a thinking person. Mom, it seems as if all playfulness has disappeared from your life. And yeah, you're not able to play with life that has been given to you." And Mom, your head is stuffed with all kinds of rubbish. And just as for me, I'm letting it out, but you have to let it out of your head. Let it go. And Mom, isn't it so that you are most unhappy in your life? And oh my gosh, this was really speaking to somewhere very deep within me. And I knew it was true. I knew this was really the case. So that evening, I decided to become more warm, more playful, and more attentive as a mom for him. Because I realized, how can I expect him to become better if I'm not doing better? And that was a major decision because I thought I didn't have feelings at all. I was just sort of this, only this. And I had no feelings at all. I was just a thinking person, actually. And I had no idea how to become more warm, more playful, and more attentive. But I was very decisive about it. This is what I'm going to do. And then the next surprise or amazement came, because only by that decision, my son recovered within a week from his year-long problems. Without doing anything with him. And it was also the start of my new life, so to speak. I think I didn't have had not much of a life before that. And it was also the birth of PresentChild. So there was another, you could almost say shock to me, that even that by making a decision and improving my life, his life improved just like that. It was quite a few years later where I discovered also the origin of my severe unhappiness. When I was a little kid, I was severely ill a lot of times. And I had a couple of situations where I was nearly dead. Well, anyway, I just carry on. And also, I was that weak that I could not walk, even when I passed 1.5 years old. And in this whole situation, I had two parents who were emotionally not available for me. So this little baby girl, Janita, she was most unhappy, almost dying, scared to death, of course. And she didn't want to feel what she felt. So she decided to close it off, to really, later on, it felt like sort of a bubble that I was living in. So the outer world was not getting in, but I, of course, was isolated in my bubble. And I couldn't, relate to other people out there. And, whoa, later on in life, it feels as though with 34 years old, when I started living through these lessons of my son, for the first time, this bubble, was broken, so to say. And there was a connection between me and the outer world. And it was a gradual process, actually, because I felt scared for this whole world around me. So it was a gradual process. And I became the mom of this little girl, Janita. And I was, looking through my blind spots, and I was taking care of her, welcoming her as a really welcome child in my life. So I had 3 children, 1 extra. And I welcomed her together with this isolation, with this fear, with all of the terror that she had been living with in her bubble. And because of that, because she had a mom for the first time in her life, it feels as though my childhood started that day. And that's a strange thing to say, because I was 34 years old and I had a consciousness, of course, as a grown-up. But it feels as though my child life started that day. And this child was growing up, and but I was consciously aware of it, of how a child feels and reacts, and what it's the wonder of a child, in life. How are things working here, and why are we doing this, and why aren't we doing that? And I was looking with child eyes. I was experiencing with a childlike heart, and it was that was a very amazing experience, I can say that. In this whole process, it took years, I can tell you that. My son fathoms me very well, better than the best psychologist that I could ever have. When it was time for me to look back into my past, my son wanted to be an archaeologist. And when I found out he was asking me, "Mom, look back into your future," he was done with being an archaeologist. So all the time he was sort of guiding me. And of course, this is unconscious for him. It's sort of an automatic reaction where he is guiding me to show me what's the next step. Where are you going now? How are you doing now? How can you do better? And it's simply by reacting on what's there in the energy, in the situation. And but I could translate it. I could translate it to myself. And so that's what happened. That's why I do what I do. I am an adult with a very alive child in me. And I became a present child translator, translating all these signals that children give to their parents. And these signals are about how are you doing? What is necessary? What is needed in your life for your fulfillment, for your joy, for your liberty, whatever it is. It can be anything. So, and as for my work, I became a present child translator. So parents tell me about their children, what's going on, what's the matter, and yeah, I can translate it into a life lesson for their life. Yeah, I guess what makes it work so well is not the work that I do or that all these hundreds of present child translators do. Actually, it is their own, the translation of their own child's behavior that does the work. Because for your child, you are willing to do everything. You're willing to climb the highest mountain. You're willing to dive into the deepest sea that, well, that you were never really, that you would never normally do. But for your child, you're willing to do anything. So for the sake of my children and children in general, I found the courage to put my life story in a book. It's called Present Child, actually. And also to put my experience of that particular evening into a method called Present Child 2. And what I do also is to, I train professionals who are working with families, with children, with parents. I train them to become present child translators. But as I said, it's so with these hundreds of present child translators, we can do a lot more than I could do on my own. And it felt like it was a really important thing that this could go out in the world and that children are heard as very wise, very loving, and very connected people, connected to us, and very, well, they are willing to do everything for us too, and for the world and the future that they hope is coming. So actually, it's not us as present child translators who do the job. Well, of course, we have a little role in it, but actually it is this very specific, loving and touching life lesson, sort of coming from, well, actually, a mom told me another day, she said, a present child translation is unlike anything. It feels as if the soul of my child is speaking to me. And it is so valuable and so worthwhile and so loving, actually. It's not like, oh, you've done something wrong. No, it's it comes from out of love, and it's actually the love between parents and children that make it happen. So yeah, um, I'm quiet for a little while and see where I proceed. Yeah, so that was more than 30 years ago. I've trained a lot of professionals to become present child translators, also internationally. The book is there in Dutch, in English, in German. And yeah, still, I mean, there's so much to be grateful for. And well, what would I want more than this? But then I also realize that children mirror not only their parents, but also they give signals about this surrounding world that they live in. They feel how education is organized. They feel where the daycare center can be improved. They feel even how our world can be improved and what's wrong with it today, right now. And they also give signals about that. They feel that life on this earth is connected, is something wonderful, animating. It's a whole that is working together. All the parts, the different parts, animals, plants, people, whatever it is, they're all working together, and it doesn't matter, even in in periods of, growth and of decay, of stillness, everything is working together. And that's the way it should be, and that's how they accept life. But we as adults, we often we don't accept it. We want to grow all the time. We have an economy that needs to grow all the time, and there's never this time for, this cycle of decay, stillness, growth, and so on. So yeah, that's something I'm looking forward to also give words for children, for children's expressions, because that's what a present child translator does, to give true words to what children unconsciously express. And they say, when you are living, making choices, doing something, let go of something, buying something, please think of us, think of our future, think of what impact does it have on our life. Think 7 generations ahead. And, there's so much to win for you too. And didn't you say you were willing to do anything for our health and happiness? So that's also in this bigger, whole. If you're doing or letting go or choosing anything, is it good for you? Is it good for the other person, animal? And is it good for a bigger whole than those two? And we are counting on you. That's what children say. We are really counting on you. I realized I forgot to tell a few examples of children giving signals to their parents. Maybe it's worthwhile to do so, because I have, of course, many, many examples over these 30 years. There's the kid who had fever peaks, and when her mom accepted she was doing well enough, she didn't have to, feverishly be busy to be a better mom. The fevers of her child disappeared. There's the story of an ugly divorce where the two parents argue about where the child should live, with the mom or with the dad. After a present child translation, or actually I think it was a relation translation. It's also possible. This mother agreed that her son would live with her ex-husband because she realized it was also good for her. So the whole situation changed dramatically. I also remember a boy attending a special needs school who was diagnosed with autism and had a couple of complaints, of course, next to that. This whole learning process wasn't doing well, but also he had sleeping problems and tics and whatever. After the translation, things started improving. Sometimes it goes very quickly, and sometimes it takes more time. This was a case where it took more time. And every month, his mom was telling me about how things were. She was called to school, and they said, "What are you doing with your son? Because things are going actually quite well." And she says, "I'm not doing anything with my son. I'm doing something." And actually, she was a mom. She was a teacher. She knew everything, how to treat autistic children. Okay, so that was special to them too. They didn't know, what are you doing? Okay, I'm doing this. And then later at the end of the school year, they said, well, actually, he's doing so well. He doesn't have to be here anymore, not in this special school. And they finished that year at the special needs school, but then later on, he continued middle education. I think that's how it's called. He continued middle school education at a regular school, and he is doing fine. Also, his sleeping problems and his tics, they've improved a lot. Having friends, relating to them, having fun, being a teenager. Yeah. So, yeah, we've had children with, who weren't potty trained. And when I translated it, and the father realized he wasn't doing the job that was meant for him. And he decided to have another job. I mean, it wasn't even there yet, but he was deciding upon it. His child was sitting on the potty and doing his thing where it should be. So we have hundreds and thousands, maybe 10,000 or so of stories like this. And I think they're all an example of the deep, deep improvement when parents let themselves be touched by the message of their child. And it's very easily, actually, because children bring it in a way that you are touched by it. And then the love of parents, the parental love to do anything, improves the whole situation for themselves and also for their children. That's what present child is, and that's why we call it a present gift, a precious gift. The child, in the way that is how it expresses itself in the present is a precious gift to all parents and other educators, and even for the whole world. So I hope you enjoyed this talk of me where I had to look for words for several times, but I think the message came across. And do know children are counting on us. Thank you for watching.